For my student learning experience, I'm going to talk about my experience studying abroad. I've always had a curious nature about myself. I've wanted to try all sorts of new things, have new experiences, and learn as much as I can from these experiences. So studying abroad was the perfect opportunity for me. The next question would be where I would go and for how long. My grandmother was born in Italy, and I grew up listening to stories of her time there. She would always share stories about how her life was different in Italy, the difference in culture, what they would do for holidays, how they would interact with their family and friends, and most importantly, the food. So growing up and listening to these stories from an early age, I believe that sparked the fire in me to travel, and Italy was the perfect place to start. I knew that I wanted to be there for an extended amount of time, and I didn't think that 6 weeks over the summer would be enough to quench my appetite for traveling. So I decided on a full semester. After talking to my family about this decision and weighing out the costs of studying abroad and remaining at Berry College, we saw that it would be very similar if I were to study abroad, so they hopped on board and supported my decision. Once I was accepted for studying abroad, I had the choice of staying in an apartment with other students or staying in a homestay family. This was an easy decision for me. I realized that if I had stayed in an apartment, I would have all of the freedom in the world and could do as I pleased without following anyone's rules. But as the point of this adventure was to gain the most amount of experiences in my time abroad, I decided staying with a homestay family with people who actually lived there and could teach me firsthand every day about their culture would provide me the best opportunity to experience and learn as much as I can. This turned out to be the best decision that I ever made. When I arrived at the apartment of my homestay family, I was met by the most gregarious man I had ever met in my life, along with his 3 daughters and 6 other students who were currently studying abroad, who were all from different places across the United States and the world. I was surprised at the size of the family I would be living with, but I was excited for the opportunity to get to know them and build a relationship with them. Our host father, who is in the middle right of this photo with a hood on, almost every other weekend he would take us all on an adventure to a small, unique village in Italy, and would teach us about the history of each town as we were riding there in the car. It was clear that he loved the students that he had with him and truly cared for us. He had been doing this for 15 years and wanted to give each and every one of us the best experience of our lifetime, and he made that his personal mission. I could talk about every aspect of this trip, but this video would take much longer than you'd like to sit here and listen for. So I'll just talk about 2 experiences that I had that encompass a lot of what I learned in my time abroad. For my spring break in my semester abroad, it was obvious that we would all be traveling somewhere. The majority of my friends and housemates wanted to go island hopping in Greece, which I would have loved to done, except the price was much more than I was willing to pay at that time. So I decided to plan my own spring break trip. Going back to the point of studying abroad, I wanted to gain the most amount of experiences and learn as much as I can while I was abroad, so I planned my own budget travel plan that would be across 5 different countries in 10 days at a much cheaper rate than the island hopping alternative. I would be traveling by myself, and my trip would consist of 1 plane ride, and I would take bus rides as the other form of transportation. I flew into Cologne, Germany, and immediately took a bus to Amsterdam, Netherlands, where I would stay for 3 days. Then I would go and visit one of my former housemates who had recently gone back to her home in Hamburg, Germany, and stayed with her for 2 nights. Then I left for Prague, Czech Republic, where I would be back on my own, and stayed there for a day and a half, before I left for Vienna, Austria, where I would be for another day and a half, until I returned to Italy and went to Venice before going back to Florence. This trip showed me how diverse these countries are from one another and how each one has their own features about them which make them so special and unique, and I am incredibly thankful that I made the decision that I did. Throughout my time abroad, I learned an incredible amount about myself. I learned that I'm capable of doing anything that I would like to do, even if it is stepping outside of my comfort zone. I learned that confidence is not something that you should have, but it's something you need to have. Without confidence, I wouldn't have pushed myself to adventure out of the country. Now that I have, it is one of my greatest achievements. I learned that I shouldn't rely on anyone else to provide me with the experience that I want to have. That I should take matters into my own hands if it is something that I really want to do. This trip showed the independence that it took for me to take matters into my own hands and plan my own trip, the confidence it took to plan it across 5 different countries where we did not speak the same language, and the adaptability to successfully and thoroughly enjoy my time while doing so. After this trip was over, I had a new confidence about myself. This led me to planning another trip at the end of the year from when my grandparents and girlfriend would be visiting me. I decided to keep this trip inside of the country. I planned a trip for the four of us across all parts of Italy, while we stayed in Airbnbs and traveled by trains in each place that we went. We went from Florence to Pisa, to Viareggio, to Cinque Terre, to Lake Garda, to Venice, back to Florence to say goodbye to my host family and for my grandparents to meet them, then on to Amalfi, Capri, and Rome. Since this was likely one of their last international trips, I wanted to make it one that they will never forget. Now we relive moments from that trip every time that we are together and are closer than we have ever been before. These have been experiences of a lifetime, and one that will never be soon forgotten. Thank you.